When she finally understood that he was not coming back, that the man who had promised to love her forever had vanished without a single explanation, something inside her broke quietly. There was no dramatic scream, no tears at first. Just a hollow sensation, as if her chest had been scooped out and left empty. The phone in her hand showed the same unanswered calls, the same unread messages. Morning had turned into afternoon, and still there was nothing. No. I'm sorry. No. I'll explain. Just silence. She sat on the edge of the bed in the small rented room they were supposed to leave together after the wedding. The dress she had tried on only a week ago hung on the back of the chair, still wrapped in plastic. She couldn't bring herself to look at it. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. It was still flat, barely noticeable, but she felt the life inside her every moment now, not with kicks yet, but with a constant awareness. And suddenly that awareness felt like a weight she could not carry alone. Fear crept in slowly, poisoning her thoughts. How would she explain this to her parents? To neighbors who already whispered? To a world that rarely forgave women for trusting too much? She imagined their looks, the questions, the pity mixed with judgment. She imagined raising a child alone, working endlessly, apologizing for her existence. And in the darkest corner of her mind, a thought took shape. Terrible, shameful, but persistent. Maybe it was better to end it now. Maybe it was the only way to stop the pain before it grew larger than her. By evening, she had made the decision with the numb determination of someone who no longer feels. She dressed mechanically, choosing a coat even though the air was warm, as if she needed extra protection from the world. The address of the clinic was saved in her phone, searched earlier that day with shaking fingers. She did not allow herself to think beyond the next hour. Thinking was dangerous. The street outside was noisy, indifferent. Cars passed, people laughed, someone argued loudly on the phone. Life went on, cruelly normal. She walked slowly, counting her steps, telling herself not to stop. Every now and then, doubt flickered, a memory of his smile, the way he used to place his hand on her belly and whisper that everything would be fine. She pushed those memories away. They hurt too much. Near a small park, she slowed down. A bench stood under a tree, its leaves barely moving in the evening breeze. Something dark lay on the ground near it. At first, she walked past without noticing, but then a sudden vibration caught her attention. A phone. Someone had dropped it, and it was ringing softly, the screen lighting up the pavement. For a moment she hesitated. It wasn't her problem. Nothing was her problem anymore. But the ringing didn't stop. Almost against her will, she bent down and picked it up. The screen showed a notification. A video file, recently recorded, already open to play. No lock, no password. Just one tap away. She frowned, confused, intending to close it and leave the phone on the bench. Her finger slipped. The video started instantly. At first, she didn't understand what she was seeing. The image was shaky, poorly lit. Then the camera focused, and her breath caught painfully in her throat. It was him. Her fiancé. His face filled the screen, and she barely recognized him. One eye was swollen, his lips split, dried blood dark against his skin. His hands were bound, visible only for a second as the camera trembled. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard it hurt. The world around her disappeared. The park, the street, the noise. There was only the screen and the sound of his labored breathing. If you're seeing this, his voice cracked, hoarse, nothing like the confident tone she knew. Please listen. He swallowed with difficulty, glancing to the side as if afraid of someone just out of frame. I didn't leave you. I swear. They took me. I don't know how long I have. Her knees weakened, and she sank onto the bench, gripping the phone so tightly her fingers went numb. Tears blurred her vision, but she couldn't look away. I couldn't call you. They wouldn't let me. He coughed, wincing in pain. They said if I tried, you'd suffer. I was scared. I still am. His eyes filled with tears, and that broke something deep inside her. She had never seen him cry before. Please don't think I abandoned you. And the baby. Please protect our baby. That's all I ask. A harsh voice sounded in the background, angry, impatient. The camera jerked violently. I love you, he said quickly, desperately. No matter what happens, remember that. I love you both. The video cut off. For a long moment, She could not move. The phone slipped slightly in her hand, but she didn't notice. Cold spread through her body, not from the evening air, but from the realization crashing down on her. Everything she had believed that day, the betrayal, the abandonment, the hopelessness, was a lie built on fear and ignorance. He hadn't chosen to leave. He had been taken from her. And while she was walking toward the clinic, convinced she had nothing left, he was somewhere suffering, trusting her to keep their child safe. A sob tore out of her chest, raw and uncontrollable. She bent forward, shaking, pressing one hand to her stomach as if to shield the life inside her. "I'm sorry," she whispered over and over, not knowing whether she was apologizing to the baby, to him, or to herself. The thought of what she had almost done made her feel sick. One more hour, one more step, and she would have made a choice she could never undo. Slowly, as the tears subsided, something else took their place. Anger. Determination. Resolve. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat and straightened her back. This was no longer just about her pain. Someone she loved was in danger. A child depended on her. Running away from life was no longer an option. She replayed the video, this time forcing herself to pay attention to details, the background sounds, the walls behind him, the accent of the voices she heard. She didn't know where to start, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity: she was not going to the clinic. Not now. Not ever. She stood up abruptly, the bench scraping softly against the ground. Her hands were still trembling, but her steps were faster now, purposeful. She would go to the police. She would show them the video. She would ask for help, demand it if necessary. And if the authorities failed her, she would keep searching, keep fighting. For him. For their child. For the future that had almost been erased by despair. As she walked away from the park, clutching the phone like a lifeline, the city looked different. Still loud, still chaotic, but no longer empty. The fear was still there, the uncertainty too, but beneath it burned a fragile, stubborn hope. She had been standing on the edge of an irreversible decision, and fate, or something greater, had placed that phone in her path. She didn't know what awaited her next. Pain, struggle, long nights of waiting were almost certain. But she also knew this: she had chosen life. And that choice, born in the cold glow of a shattered video, would change everything. When she finally realized that he was truly gone, not just late or busy or avoiding a difficult conversation, but completely vanished from her life, a strange stillness settled inside her. It was as if her emotions had frozen to protect her from breaking apart. She stared at the phone in her hands, scrolling endlessly through their last messages. The final one was hers. "Please answer me. I'm scared." It had been read. There was no reply. The room around her felt cozy, unfamiliar, though she had lived there for months. The small kitchen still smelled faintly of the coffee he used to make every morning. His jacket hung by the door, untouched since the day he left. Or disappeared. She didn't know which word hurt more. Outside the window, life continued with unbearable ease. Children ran past, a couple laughed loudly, someone played music from a passing car. The contrast felt cruel. Her hand drifted to her stomach, a habit she had developed unconsciously. It was still early, too early for visible signs, but she felt different now. Fragile, responsible, terrified. When she had told him about the pregnancy, his face had lit up with a mix of shock and joy. He had laughed nervously, pulled her into his arms, and whispered that they would figure everything out together. Those words echoed painfully in her mind now. Together. A promise that felt broken beyond repair. As the hours passed without news, fear slowly transformed into panic, and panic into despair. She imagined every possible explanation. Maybe he had met someone else, maybe he had panicked and run, maybe everything she believed about him was a lie. Each thought stabbed deeper than the last. By evening, the worst conclusion seemed the most believable. He had abandoned her. Abandoned them. The world suddenly felt hostile. She imagined the conversations that awaited her if the truth came out. The disappointment in her parents' eyes. The judgment masked as concern. The whispered gossip. She had always tried to live correctly, to make the right choices. And now one mistake threatened to define her entire life. Raising a child alone felt impossible. Not just financially, but emotionally. She was already exhausted, already drowning. The idea came quietly, almost gently, as if trying not to scare her. At first, she rejected it immediately, horrified by herself. But the more she thought about it, the more it began to feel like an escape. A way to undo what had gone wrong. A way to stop the pain before it became permanent. She hated herself for thinking it, yet she couldn't push it away. By the time darkness fell, her decision felt heavy but firm. She told herself she was being practical, realistic. She dressed slowly, carefully, as though preparing for an ordinary errand. Her reflection in the mirror looked pale, older than her years. She avoided her own eyes. If she looked too closely, she might change her mind. The walk to the clinic felt unreal. Each step echoed in her head. She kept her gaze fixed ahead, afraid that if she stopped, if she allowed herself to think, everything would collapse. Cars passed, strangers brushed by her shoulder, none of them knowing what she was about to do. The indifference of the world felt unbearable. Near a small park, she slowed down. The path curved gently, lined with old trees and worn benches. She had passed this place many times before, but today something caught her attention. A phone lay on the ground near one of the benches, its screen lighting up intermittently. It vibrated softly, as if insisting on being noticed. She hesitated. Picking it up felt like an intrusion, a distraction she didn't need. She took a step forward, then another, but the vibration continued. Annoyed and oddly uneasy, she turned back. Someone must be looking for it, she murmured, bending down. The phone was unlocked. A video file filled the screen, already open, as though it had been left deliberately. She intended to close it. Instead, her finger brushed the screen, and the video began to play. The first second meant nothing. The image was dark, unfocused. Then the camera shifted, and she felt her heart lurch violently. The face that appeared on the screen was unmistakable. Him. But not the man she knew. His skin was bruised, his eye swollen nearly shut. Dried blood marked the corner of his mouth. He looked exhausted, broken, yet painfully real. Her breath left her in a silent gasp. The park vanished. The clinic, the decision, everything dissolved into the glowing rectangle in her hand. If you're watching this, his voice was hoarse, strained. He swallowed hard, as if speaking itself caused pain. I don't know how much time I have. His eyes darted sideways, fear clear in every movement. They said I could record this. I don't know why. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the bench, barely aware of the cold wood beneath her. Tears welled up instantly, blurring the screen, but she wiped them away desperately. She couldn't miss a single word. I didn't leave you, he continued, his voice breaking. Please believe me. I would never do that. They took me. I can't explain everything. Not now. A sound was heard in the background, distant voices, harsh and impatient. He flinched. I tried to fight. I tried to escape. But they threatened you. And the baby. Her hand flew to her mouth to stifle a sob. Her other hand pressed protectively against her stomach, as if shielding the life inside her from the danger spilling out of the screen. I was so scared, he whispered. I still am. But if something happens to me, please don't think I chose this. Please don't give up. His eyes glistened. Our child deserves to live. To be loved. Promise me. A shout echoed behind the camera. The image shook violently. I love you, he said quickly, urgently. Both of you. No matter what happens. Remember that. The video ended abruptly, the screen going dark. For several seconds, she couldn't move or breathe. The phone felt unbearably heavy in her hand. Cold spread through her veins, followed by a rush of heat as understanding slammed into her. He hadn't abandoned her. He had been taken. While she had been drowning in assumptions and fear, he had been suffering, fighting, clinging to hope that she would do the right thing. A broken sound escaped her throat, half sob, half scream. She bent forward, shaking uncontrollably. I'm sorry, she whispered again and again. Sorry for doubting him. Sorry for almost making a choice that would have destroyed everything he was fighting for. Sorry for being so close to giving up. The image of the clinic flashed in her mind, and nausea twisted her stomach. One small twist of fate, one forgotten phone, and her life, and the life growing inside her, would have ended differently. The thought was terrifying. As the shock slowly faded, something else began to form inside her. A hard, steady resolve. She wiped her tears, drawing a shaky breath. Fear was still there, stronger than ever, but it no longer controlled her. Now it had direction. She replayed the video, forcing herself to focus. The background, the sounds, any detail that could help. She didn't know where he was, or who had taken him, but she knew she couldn't stay silent. Doing nothing was no longer an option. She stood up, her legs trembling but holding her weight. The world around her returned gradually, the rustling leaves, distant traffic, the murmur of voices. Everything felt sharper now, more real. She clutched the phone tightly, as if letting go might erase the truth she had just seen. She turned away from the path leading to the clinic and walked in the opposite direction. Each step felt like reclaiming something she had almost lost. She didn't know what lay ahead. Police stations, disbelief, long nights of waiting, maybe even danger. But she knew this. She would fight. For him. For their child. For the future that had almost been stolen by despair. As she disappeared into the evening crowd, the weight in her chest was still there, but beneath it burned a fragile, stubborn hope. Fate had placed that phone in her path for a reason. And because of it, she had chosen life. When the last trace of hope finally slipped away, it didn't arrive with thunder or drama. It came quietly, almost politely, settling inside her like a heavy fog. She stared at her phone for a long time, as if sheer will might make it vibrate, light up, show his name on the screen. But it remained stubbornly silent. The message history was painfully short, ending with her unanswered plea. Hours ago, she had still been convincing herself that something reasonable had happened. A dead battery, an emergency, a misunderstanding. Now even those fragile excuses felt foolish. The room felt cozy, as if it no longer belonged to her. The walls, once warm and familiar, pressed in from all sides. On the table stood 2 cups, left from the morning when she had made tea out of habit, automatically pouring one for him before remembering he wasn't there. His shoes were by the door, neatly placed, as he always did. That detail hurt more than anything else. A man who planned to disappear did not leave his shoes behind. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her shoulders sagging. Her body felt exhausted, but her mind refused to rest. Thoughts chased one another in endless circles. Why hadn't he warned her? Why hadn't he said goodbye? What had she done wrong? Each question stabbed deeper, feeding the growing sense of worthlessness. Her hand drifted to her stomach, resting there instinctively. She closed her eyes. The pregnancy still felt unreal, like a secret she carried alone. When she had told him, his reaction had been clumsy but sincere. He had gone silent for a moment, then smiled in that crooked way she loved, saying he was scared, but happy. He had kissed her forehead and promised they would manage. Remembering that now felt like reopening a wound that had barely begun to heal. Fear crept in slowly, wrapping itself around her thoughts. She imagined herself standing alone with a child in her arms, facing a world that was rarely kind. She imagined explaining everything to her parents, hearing the disappointment hidden behind forced calm. She imagined the whispers, the pitying looks, the quiet judgment. The future stretched before her like a dark, endless corridor with no doors. By late afternoon, despair had settled so deeply that it felt permanent. The idea came to her again, the one she had tried to push away earlier. This time, it didn't feel shocking. It felt logical, almost merciful. If she ended it now, there would be no explanations, no long struggle, no child growing up with questions she couldn't answer. The thought made her stomach twist, but it also brought a strange sense of relief. She hated herself for that relief. Still, she began to act on it. Slowly, mechanically, as if someone else were controlling her movements. She changed her clothes, choosing something simple and loose. She checked her bag twice, though she didn't know why. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were dull, ringed with shadows. She turned away quickly. Outside, the air was warm, heavy with the smell of dust and exhaust. The city moved around her, indifferent and alive. She walked without rushing, following the route she had memorized earlier. Each step felt unreal, as if she were watching herself from a distance. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that this was wrong, that she should stop. She ignored it. Stopping meant thinking, and thinking hurt too much. As she passed a small park, the noise of the street softened. Birds rustled in the trees, and a few People sat on benches, absorbed in their own lives. For a moment, she envied them. Their worries were probably ordinary, solvable. Not like hers. She was almost past the park when a soft vibration reached her ears. She stopped without understanding why. The sound came again, faint but persistent. She turned her head and saw a phone lying near one of the benches, half hidden by fallen leaves. The screen lit up briefly, then went dark. She hesitated. This wasn't her concern. She had no energy left for strangers' problems. She took a step forward, then another. The vibration came again, louder this time, almost insistent. With a sigh that sounded more like a surrender, she turned back. Someone's probably looking for it, she murmured, mostly to herself. She bent down and picked it up. The phone was unlocked. A video filled the screen, paused at the first frame. She frowned. That was strange. Her intention was to close it and leave the phone on the bench where its owner could find it. Her finger brushed the screen. The video began to play. At first, the image was dark and shaky, and she felt a brief flash of annoyance. Then the camera steadied, and her heart seemed to stop altogether. The face on the screen was his. Not the smiling, confident man she knew, but someone broken and bruised. His eye was swollen, his cheek discolored with deep purple and yellow marks. A cut on his lip had dried into a dark line. A cold wave rushed through her body, starting at her chest and spreading outward. She couldn't breathe. The sounds of the park faded into nothing. There was only the screen, glowing cruelly bright in her trembling hands. If you're seeing this, his voice was hoarse, strained, as if every word cost him effort. He swallowed, glancing to the side. Fear was etched into every line of his face. I don't know how long I have. They said I could record this. I don't know why. Her knees gave way, and she dropped onto the bench, clutching the phone as though it were the only solid thing left in the world. Tears blurred her vision, but she wiped them away frantically. She needed to see him. Needed to hear every word. I didn't leave you, he said, his voice breaking. Please believe me. I would never do that. I was taken. I tried to reach you, but they wouldn't let me. His breath hitched. They said if I tried, you'd pay for it. And the baby. A sob tore from her chest. She pressed her free hand to her stomach, protectively, as if shielding the life inside her from the danger seeping through the screen. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have been stronger. I should have found a way. A harsh sound echoed somewhere behind the camera, making him flinch. I don't know what they want yet. I don't know if I'll get out. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might drown out his voice. If something happens to me, he continued, tears shining in his eyes, please don't think I chose this. Please don't give up. Promise me you'll keep the baby safe. Promise me you'll live. A shout cut through the air. The camera shook violently. I love you, he said quickly, desperately. Both of you. Always. The video ended abruptly. The screen went black. For a long moment, she sat completely still. The phone slipped slightly in her grasp, but she didn't notice. Cold seeped into her bones, followed by a crushing weight of understanding. He hadn't abandoned her. He hadn't lied. He had been taken from her, silenced, trapped. While she had been walking toward a decision that would erase everything, he had been fighting, clinging to hope that she would hold on. A broken cry escaped her, raw and uncontrollable. She bent forward, shaking, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered again and again. Sorry for doubting him. Sorry for believing the worst. Sorry for almost making a choice that would have destroyed the last thing he was trying to protect. The image of the clinic flashed through her mind, sharp and terrifying. Her stomach twisted violently. One more hour. One more step. Fate had been terrifyingly close to letting her destroy everything. As the shock slowly eased, something else began to rise from beneath the fear, anger. Not blind rage, but a fierce, burning resolve. Someone had done this to him. Someone had threatened her unborn child. Running away was no longer an option. She wiped her face with trembling hands and replayed the video, forcing herself to focus on details. The background sounds. The walls behind him. The accent of the voices she had heard. Anything that could help. Her fear was still there, but now it had a purpose. She stood up slowly. Her legs shook, but they held. The world returned in fragments. The rustling leaves, distant laughter, passing footsteps. Everything looked sharper, clearer, as if she were seeing it for the first time. She turned deliberately away from the path leading to the clinic and walked in the opposite direction. Each step felt heavy but right. She didn't know how this would end. She didn't know if the police would believe her, if she would be able to save him. But she knew this with absolute certainty. She would fight. She would fight for him. For their child. For the future that had almost been erased by despair. As she disappeared into the evening crowd, clutching the phone to her chest like a lifeline, fear still walked beside her. But it no longer led the way. Hope did. Fragile, trembling, but alive.